All right, hello everybody. We are starting back up the Shakopee Podcast, and so today we're going to talk a little bit about ICE and a specific instance that happened here in Shakopee. And so my name is Brad Tapke, State Representative here in Shakopee 54A, and today I have my friend Kevin Wetherille here with me, who was a constitutional observer during Operation Metro Surge, and we're going to talk about something that happened that day that was here in Shakopee and think people should know about. So Kevin, why don't you introduce yourself?
Good morning, Kevin Wetherille. As you said, a constitutional observer during Metro Surge. By day, I'm a lawyer here in town, doing a general practice. Live in Shakopee as well.
Got it. And so Um, we had been doing quite a bit of observing during the time. I was mostly on the dispatch side of things and on the phone with folks as they were out and trying to help make sure that we're keeping families here in Shakopee safe from ICE and everything that was going on that way. And you were out on the road, and this was a day where you were out on the road. Why don't you talk to people about what was going on this day in January?
Yeah, it was a Saturday, early Saturday morning, January 10th. My recollection is got up and got out of my house before 8
That's
o'clock.
so that's so lawyery. My recollection is
Well, I mean, I didn't remember all of it in detail, but so I was out early. I think we were on a call, you and I, and at least one other vehicle. I don't remember how many folks. And somebody had reported seeing ice in Shakopee that morning. Specifically, I recall a discussion about a blue Ford F-150 with California license plates that was going, when it got on 169, someone else had been observing them. The vehicle got on 169 and was going, I recall, like 100 miles an hour to lose whoever it was observing them. And then the other vehicle said that they saw that pickup make a U-turn, illegal U-turn on 169, and go from north now going south. And apparently it had done so in the vicinity of a state trooper who was also out on 169 that morning. I was out somewhere else in town. I was out towards, I think, Marystown Road and 17th Avenue. I don't think I had seen any ice that morning. I was kind of just driving around, and I had planned to go to the grocery store at some point during that. At any rate, so I came down. They said they were heading towards south on 169 towards Marystown Road. And so I went down that way on Marystown Road to the roundabout coming off the highway there. And I went a different direction through the roundabout than the vehicles were coming from. But I did see all of a sudden the blue pickup truck being followed by a Minnesota State trooper getting off the highway, which I thought was interesting because it was clear to me the trooper was following the blue pickup truck. And so I went back through the roundabout, followed them towards Veerling Drive in Shakopee, and then ultimately um, the trooper, they were about a quarter mile or so, maybe a half mile ahead of me, and I saw the trooper pull over, initiate a traffic stop, and pull the blue pickup truck over. And so I watched.
exactly.
Yeah, so this is the traffic stop that the trooper made. You can see he's got his flashers on and he's pulled over this blue pickup truck.
Right, exactly. And so, how do you have this video, and why do you have this video?
So after the traffic stop of the blue pickup truck, I had driven by. This was on a residential street. I can't remember the street. I think it might have been Jefferson Street in Shakopee. While that traffic stop was going on, I drove by, went a block or two up, and kind of sat at the corner and just watched. And as soon as they were done doing whatever it was they were doing, I immediately got pulled over by the trooper. And I was on a cross street perpendicular to where they were facing, and as the blue truck drove by, the ICE agents in the car kind of gave me a wave, their window down. And remember, this day it's like 10 degrees out. It was cold.
And it had snowed that night too, so
It had
it
snowed a
was
little
all
bit
the
that night.
roads were all
Yeah.
shitty, and yeah,
Yeah. And you can actually hear in the video, there's a guy snow blowing his driveway right there. But anyway, the ICE guys kind of wave and smile at me as they drive by, and then they go up past, and then I turn left and go to follow them. And immediately the trooper pulled me over. He ultimately gave me a ticket. And then I challenged the ticket. And when you do that, you get the videos, you get all the evidence. The state has to give you all that sort of stuff. So that's why I have the videos, is they gave me the videos in discovery as a result of that traffic ticket.
So let's watch what happens. I believe I have this queued up correctly. Will you tell everybody what's going on here?
Yeah, so according to the officer, and there's no audio here, by the way, um, the officer had turned off his body camera, um, which I don't think he should have done in during his conversation with the ICE agents. Now, if you pause it here, so what? There were two clips. The reason this has no audio is he had originally turned off his body camera so that um, we could not, like when he went up to talk to the ICE agents, which again, I don't think he was supposed to do that, or was, I don't think that was the policy allowed that. Then when he turned it back on, so when he gets in the car here and he turns his lights on to pull me over, the lights, the way the system works is it automatically activates all of their cameras. And their cameras have like a 1 minute or 30 second, depending on the camera, they have this back recording function where they're always recording, and they save, like when it gets activated, they automatically pull the past minute, I think is what it is, or something like that. So when he activated his lights to pull me over, it captured a minute in the past, and that's why you see him talking to the federal agents on this clip. But that back capture system apparently is video only and no audio. So we don't hear what he and those agents are talking about at the truck there. We don't hear anything about that. All you see is what you see, and then the audio clicks in. I think it's 30 seconds or 1 minute, whatever that delay window is.
Yeah.
It kicks in and you can see it. So he's just completing his traffic stop of these ICE agents, and then getting back in his car, and then he immediately roars up the street and pulls me over.
Yeah, you can see in this video, like, this is a residential street. You see how fast he's going.
Yeah, he was hauling.
Yeah, it was.
And I don't know if it's this. There was a video where you can actually hear the engine roar. And I don't remember which one it is, but if you listen carefully, you could hear like the engine of that squad, that the Hemi, right?
Right.
Kind of roar to life as he hauls up the street to pull me over. How about failure to turn or something, or failure to signal turn? Like when he pulls me over, he basically right then suggests he's given me a ticket for not using a turn signal at some point when and I still don't know to this day when he said I didn't use the turn signal, but he had already decided, like, hey, he's going to pull me over and give me a ticket for not using a turn signal.
Here, I'll go back to it just so everybody can hear what he says.
How about no turn signal?
Could you hear it that time?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, so it was just, I was on the call and listening to what was going on, and so I'm chair of the DFL, chair of the Transportation Committee, and so the troopers fall under our jurisdiction in the legislature, and having a state trooper coordinate with ICE, whether it was intentional or started out intentional or unintentional, was just something that we absolutely should not be doing, in my opinion. And so we went through this and got out of the whole thing and figured out what was happening. But I also want to make sure that we play the next clip before we start talking about what happens next here. And so this is a clip from his body cam, I believe. And in this clip,
that's the squad.
Yeah, the squad cam.
Harassing federal officers.
Yeah.
So that was also the part that pissed me off the most when I
Yeah,
saw the videos afterward. What did he say?
harassing federal officers. I mean, he had made up his mind, again, so this ultimately resulted in a trial on this traffic ticket, which is, traffic tickets like this is like a speeding ticket, by the way. It's a fine at most. I haven't had a traffic ticket in probably 10 years or more, but the principle of it kind of irritated me that I knew what he was doing. And so I asked for a court date thinking eventually he or a prosecutor will look at this and go, this is kind of a waste of time and energy, and this is kind of silly. We don't need to go through with this. But they went through with it. And it was clear at that trial, like he had every intention of assisting ICE to keep me. He was lied to, I think, by the agents. They told him that I had been harassing them that morning. I hadn't seen that vehicle. You can honestly, like, if you played all these videos, there's like total of like 14 minutes of footage. You can actually see in the roundabout when the first time I'm going a different direction through the roundabout at Marystown and 169 than they are. And that's the first time I had seen that blue pickup truck all morning. And so it just simply wasn't true. I hadn't done anything. And, even the officer testified following and observing federal or even state law enforcement is not illegal in the state of Minnesota. You're allowed to do that. He had just decided he was not a fan of folks observing ICE. He seemed to be a fan of ICE activities at the time. That's, I thought, pretty obvious at the trial. And so he had made a decision that he was going to help those guys out and make sure that I couldn't watch what they were doing, which he did by pulling me over because they drove away and I pulled over at the side of the road. So, yeah, it was a little thing, but also like really, I thought, indicative of like, what is he out there doing and what's his goal, right?
Right. And part of the reason why I wanted to talk about this now is that we've obviously had the tragedies in Minnesota where multiple people were killed by ICE. Just recently, a traffic stop in Houston resulted in another death of a person. Then just a couple days ago, a man was killed in front of his 3-year-old daughter and his wife in Maine. And I think it's really interesting, indicative to me as to what ICE is actually doing with things like this. Like the ICE agent, if ICE agents had the ability to pull people over, the jurisdiction to pull people over, they would have pulled you over for a traffic ticket or something like that. But they just simply don't have the jurisdiction to do that kind of thing unless they have a reasonable suspicion to pull someone over. They don't have their Trump administration is making a big deal out of ICE not doing traffic stops now. But they never had the ability to do traffic stops in the first place. And so how does this kind of fit into the larger context of what is going on, and why is it important that people know what happened here is as small of a thing as this in the grand scheme of things actually is, like how they treated our community and what they did through Shakopee?
Yeah, so in January of this year, I mean, I was aware this was not the first time that I had been approached by law enforcement while out observing. I had earlier had ICE agents. I was in a parking lot of a church, and I had 2 ICE agents come and box me in, come up to my window, threaten me, knock on the window. We had other observers got pulled over on the street and similarly harassed and threatened by ICE agents. There was video of it. Local news played it. And so these were rogue law enforcement agents. They were not following the law, and they were not, to your point, ICE agents can't effectuate a traffic stop for a traffic violation. They can do a traffic stop if they believe, for example, in their system that I am a person who they have a warrant for, or that there's some federal law enforcement reason to pull me over because they think a vehicle's registered in my name or something like that, and there's an immigration warrant or hold or some such issue out there. Then they have the right to do that. But they were just indiscriminately pulling people over, and this trooper played into that, frankly. And that's what the problem here was. Is
Right.
It wasn't limited to ICE agents, right? Like these ICE agents during the trial, this trooper testified that he talked to them for quite a while. I mean, and he didn't First of all, he didn't verify their identity. He testified he didn't confirm they were in fact federal agents. To this day, we assume they're federal agents based on what we see in the video and what he testified to. But he said he never asked for a badge. He never asked for identification. He didn't run the license plate. Actually, I think he said he couldn't run the license plate because it was obscured when he was behind it. He didn't get their names, who they were, which is highly unusual. You know, if a law enforcement officer does some activity and someone is a witness and says, "Hey, this happened," they get the name of the person who said that, so that in the future, they usually actually ask for their driver's license, right? And then they just scan it in their little computer system, so they have that information. He didn't do any of that. And so the stunning thing to me was that this was in that same family of like almost like an illegal stop. Now, ultimately, the court decided he had a reason to pull me over. The court credited him with believing I didn't use my turn signal, but then the court ultimately acquitted me because there was no evidence that I didn't use my turn signal ultimately. So, to me, in the overall context of things, it was, when you put it all together, and keep in mind, a lot of this, like, we didn't really know, I didn't know until the trial about how this all played together, because the videos we got were not connected, and there were gaps in the video. There was this issue with no audio, and we weren't sure. I wasn't sure why there wasn't an audio. Honestly, I thought he just like scrubbed it when it was provided. I thought he just like didn't provide the audio because he wanted to hide what he was talking with these guys in the blue truck about. But apparently he had just turned his camera off, which again, they're not supposed to be able to do that. So to me, like, this was, by this trooper, he was on a very limited scale, of course, coordinating efforts with these federal agents. And, you know, he's pulling people over to help them and over nonsense, right? And what's ironic is during the trial, we played every minute, every second of every video. We stopped it. We went through it. And he admitted that in his squad video, when he pulled over the blue truck, they didn't signal their turn. Like, you can see it on the video. And I asked him, when he pulled me over, I assumed he was giving me like a warning. You know, you get pulled over for speeding sometimes, and the officer says, "Hey, you were going 11 miles over the limit," or whatever. And you get it. It looks like a ticket, but it's a warning, and you don't have to pay anything. You don't have to do anything. It's just a warning.
Right.
You know, when he pulled me over, I thought, okay, he's going to give me a warning for something. It is what it is. It doesn't matter. Right. In fact, I said that to him. I asked him, I said, "Did you give the blue truck the same warning for not using a turn signal?" Because when I turned, I saw that they didn't have their turn signal. Like, I could see it. It was plain as day, and you could see it on the video. And he didn't like that I asked that question. He started asking me like what my interest was in the blue truck. So he was absolutely out to help those guys out and assist ICE and make sure that, you know, people like me who were out there just observing couldn't do that. And
Right.
So I think that's the real frightening part, is that, again, this is law enforcement, right? We already have a rogue agency in the federal government doing things that have been over and over declared to be illegal in terms of their enforcement activities. But then we have a state trooper who, you know, in my opinion and in my profession, I've always put state troopers kind of at the top in terms of law enforcement hierarchy. I mean, the
Absolutely.
state patrol get the pick of the pick. Like, it is a selective job. It's highly, you know, coveted. It's a
Tons of
if you're
training,
going,
lots of
yeah,
academies,
if you're
all
going
the
into
things.
law enforcement and you're at the top of your, you know, kind of your cohort, like, state patrol is a really, you know, desirable position. And so, you know, I've always held them in really high regard because they tend to, honestly, they don't have an axe to grind. They're not local cops or whatever, right? Where they know people, you know, they work in a community where they hear about, you know, different folks who maybe have a reputation for, you know, not being the most outstanding citizens. That's not, the state patrol doesn't have that. I mean,
Right.
they usually don't carry those biases. And so, I've always held them in pretty high regard. I've known a couple of troopers personally throughout my life that have all been, you know, honestly some of the most honest, upstanding people you could possibly meet. So
For sure.
that really was shocking, particularly because I don't know about you, but when I think of state patrol, I don't think about patrolling residential streets in the city of Shakopee, right? Like, I think they're driving on the highways and they're, patrolling the highways, responding to accident calls, public safety on the highways. That's their job. And then here this guy is in a residential neighborhood in the west side of Shakopee, for some strange reason, doing, enforcing, at least trying to, what he believed, enforce some sort of traffic regulation, but
Right.
which wasn't
And
violated. So,
and I thought it was really like, so I was called as a witness just because I was on the phone I
mhm.
was available as a witness, I guess is a better way to say that, because I was on the phone during the interaction, and I thought it was really one of the most frightening parts to me is that on your citation he wrote on there that he'd confirmed that
Mhm.
ICE, that it was federal agents, confirmed federal agents. I forget exactly what the wording was
Yeah.
on that citation, but then when he came to trial, he was like, he said over and over that he never confirmed that they were actual agents, and that part is extremely concerning to me, because here in Shakopee we had a lot of things going on from all different types of federal agents, hundreds of different vehicles in town at a single time, and then on top of that, we had bounty hunters as well. And so there was no
Mhm.
way for anybody to know what ability people had for jurisdiction. Like, unless ICE has a reasonable suspicion to pull you over, they can't do it. And so someone being brown is not a reasonable suspicion to pull someone over. And so people being able to know who to trust in law enforcement, who not to, who is suspicious and who is problematic in the federal agent side of things, and then having bounty hunters on top of this that have absolutely no jurisdiction whatsoever it's just concerning. And so we are working through some of those things, and we'll see where that continues to go as that moves forward. But it's I'm glad. Obviously not glad that any of this happened, but if it was going to happen to anybody, I'm glad it happened to you, and that it was
I am too.
acquitted on there, and because you know what you're doing, and you can represent, and you know what's legally right and wrong. So the judge ended up acquitting the whole thing, and so it all went away basically.
Yep.
But it is all on the record, and it's all there, and so people know what happened and why, and this kind of thing, plus many, many other significantly more terrible things happened everywhere, with guns being pulled, with people being threatened, with late night phone calls and creepy things that ICE did constantly to observers and to folks that they were trying to entrap and things like that. So is there anything on here that I haven't covered that you want to make sure that people know about as we talk about what was happening in this little slice of January?
Yeah, I think you're spot on with this issue about like what he put on that's the stunning thing about this is, but I was going to show the ticket. So the way it's important for people to understand that, police officers write reports. So every time um, somebody gets ticketed or charged, there has to be a written report. And when it's a traffic violation like this, the report is notes on a traffic ticket. And the traffic tickets, it's not like 20 years ago where it's the old paperless carbon, they write it on a pad and they tear the yellow
Yeah.
one out or pink one out and give it to you. It's all computerized now, right? And so they go in and they type their notes right into the system and it prints out. Some of those notes make it onto the ticket that they actually hand you in that moment. Some of them they add later or get added shortly thereafter, and there's like a second page. And so you're absolutely right. In that second page of notes, I mean, he wrote that twice, I think, in this ticket, he wrote that it was possible that the blue truck, he didn't know if it was federal agents. He thought it might be law enforcement. He wasn't sure. And then he goes on to say he confirmed it was federal agents. And to your point, you recall watching it. I asked that question maybe 5 or 6 different ways about like, he used the word confirmed. How did he confirm that they were agents? And he hadn't confirmed anything. And they weren't wearing any. I asked him, did they wear any identifying insignia? Like, was there a badge that said FBI or the nameplate on, body armor or whatever? And you can see there was none of that. I mean, these were just two guys in a blue, probably 10-ish-year-old F-150 with out-of-state California license plates on it. The other stunning thing he said, I mean, he doubled and tripled down on this concept of like that this was all on the up and up, because I asked him, is it unusual for law enforcement to drive a blue F-150 without a state plates? And he was like, no, it's a common law enforcement vehicle. And I thought, I mean, I don't, a blue F-150, like a bright blue F-150 with California plates is a common law enforcement vehicle. That just didn't make any sense, right? And so,
Right.
um, he frankly, I mean, I don't know. I don't think the judge was too happy with what he did. I'm kind of surprised that, there's another layer to this locally here that I think is important. I cannot believe someone in the county attorney's office didn't cut this thing off and say, we don't need
Right.
to be doing this. I mean,
There were
I
so
think
many opportunities. Just say, let's not worry about this. Yes.
I mean, this was, I mean, I honestly have to think in part it was personal, right? But at the end of the day, let's say that the judge found me guilty of not using my turn signal on January 10th. I think it's like $100 fine, and it goes on your driving record. And I suppose if you get a few driving tickets in a few years, your insurance might go up a little bit. That's it. Like, it's a nothing burger. It's not even a crime. Petty misdemeanors are essentially administrative violations. They're not crimes. And that's what this was. So all of that over, this and the trial took, I mean, you were watching 2.5, 3 hours.
2.5, 3 hours, yeah.
And you're talking about a judge who's getting paid a six-figure salary, right? You're talking about a court reporter who's getting paid a six-figure government salary. You're talking about a prosecutor who's getting paid by Scott County a six-figure salary. And then you're talking about the trooper. He's probably getting paid a six-figure salary.
Law enforcement officer not enforcing the law for 3 hours.
Right. And then and he was on duty. He was sitting in his squad car because this trial was on Zoom.
Right.
Because that's the way they do these now. And he was in uniform sitting in his squad car. So he was not out doing his job to be screwing around with this nonsense. And no prosecutor ever called me to talk about this. In fact, I reached out to them and had a telephone call and asked them about the video, like maybe 2 months or a month before the trial. I said, hey, there looks like there's missing video. And that was the extent of the conversation. And the prosecutor said, okay, I'll take a look at it. I'll let you know. And I never heard back from her at all. Never called me, never made me an offer to say, hey, here's what we can do to make this go away, or is there a way we can resolve this short of trial? They just went ahead. And I mean, what a tremendous waste of time. And then that's something that prosecutor is not working on a domestic assault charge, or she's not working on a felony charge, because she's spending half a day with this garbage. And that to me is one of the biggest problems, is that nobody along the way, there were probably 6 to 8 opportunities for various people to say, hey, is this really what we should be doing? And do we really want to do this? Because to your point, there is a record of every trial. Now, there's no video. The courts in Minnesota, when we do Zoom trials, they don't record the video. That's not something allowed under the rules of court in Minnesota as of yet. So nobody can get the video and see the trial, but the transcript, there would be a written transcript just like any other trial. And so that written transcript is available and out there and is there forever. I mean, those don't go away. So, just a really kind of shocking. I honestly thought, like the day before or the day of, I'd get a notice saying it's dismissed, or somebody would call me and be like, hey, this just doesn't seem like a good use of time. Is there a way we can make this go away? And
a turn signal in a residential area that the speed limit is 25 miles an hour. Yeah.
But here's the deal. Like, just like in any other case where you're being prosecuted for something, it's beyond a reasonable doubt is the burden of proof, and the government has that burden, right? And we as citizens don't have to prove our innocence. So in this trial, I didn't have to testify, because the judge dismissed it and acquitted me before I even had to. Like, she did it at the end of the state's case, which is, again, unusual, right? Because the state got through all of their evidence. And yes, I cross-examined the trooper and asked him questions. But you were there. I was prepared to call you as a witness to say, hey, I was on this call. I heard this whole thing and this is what happened, right? And I think I recall I
I,
I was going to call you.
yeah, I was highly entertained by the like it turned there was a break and then there was a break period and then we came back and you started into you were gonna call your first witness and that was going to be me, and before you could even do that the judge was like, wait up, hold on, we have a order of dismissal to discuss or whatever that was called, and and she was having none of it, and rightfully so, because this was all a mess to start with. And one thing that as you were talking earlier, I reminded me that I want to circle back to make sure that everybody knows is that in this confirmation of whether or not they were federal agents or not, it puts still does, and it especially during Operation Metro Surge, but still is happening today, put law enforcement, police officers, sheriffs, troopers in really terrible, awful positions of having to pick sides is really a hard way to say it, but who can they trust in these kinds of things? Because the trooper said that in that blue pickup had obscured license plate, and so what we found in Shakopee that they were doing often was that they were spraying license plates with fake snow so that you couldn't read the license plate, you couldn't tell who that person was. So there was that happening, but also they were constantly switching license plates, and so the license plate didn't actually match the vehicle. So I think it's highly unlikely that even if that trooper had been able to run that vehicle, that license plate would have matched a blue Ford F-150 anyway. Like, I doubt that would have been there, even if he was able to do that, because they were constantly changing license plates, and to the point that they needed new license plates, and the Shakopee PD found them, ICE, digging through the Shakopee PD dumpsters looking for license plates that they could put on their vehicles, which is just highly illegal. Changing a license plate is just not something that can happen, but we're at very little ability to enforce state law on federal agencies. It's a really difficult high bar to be able to do anything, and so these things just happened constantly, and there's just a massive denigration of trust and the ability to know who you can trust. And if they're someone who is wanting to help you, like we teach kids, like, it's a police officer, and this is someone that you should be able to trust, and there are obviously problems in there with that depending on who you are and what family histories are and those kinds of things. But it is really, really important to understand how incredibly detrimental this whole thing was to people's ability to trust law enforcement and federal agencies and other folks, because you should be able to just say that the FBI is the FBI, and that's there, but it is not necessarily something you can trust anymore, that they're out for the right things and not for petty political purposes and those kinds of things. So
it's funny you talk about that switching plates thing, because I've had conversations with people locally who kind of don't understand or didn't agree with people observing ICE or whatnot, and they don't believe that ICE was switching plates on cars. Like, they'll now, in a different day, I was in a parking lot in Shakopee and of a warehouse, and from afar, I have a video of an ICE guy switching his plates. He opens the trunk of his car and he takes a screwdriver and he pulls the back plates off and he puts different plates on. So, like, I told somebody that. They're like, oh, yeah, I've heard that, but I don't believe that. I was like, look, I can show you a video of it. And I showed him the video. And he's like, well, and then they kind of waffle, and they're like, well, I don't know. Like, it's this weird thing that people are like, well, just because somebody like Brad Tadke says it's happening doesn't mean it's happening. It was happening. It was happening every day. It's probably happening in other states today. And it is not these are the things that
we're like, it's still happening in Minnesota for sure. Yeah.
I mean, these are things we're taught, right? Like, growing up, to your point, like, trust law enforcement as kids, and like, they're there to keep you safe and all those sorts of things. But we're also taught, like, the government can't come into your house without a warrant. The government can't just randomly pull you over for no reason and just to check on who you are, right? There are limitations under our Constitution on what law enforcement can do, unequivocally, and we've got 200 years of case law in this country that refines those things and is still going on today. And I've been practicing law for almost 25 years, and I've never seen the volume of what I would call constitutional violations by law enforcement that I've seen in the last 6 months in the state of Minnesota. It's unprecedented. The things that are going on, like people in my profession, like we talk to each other and we have different networking groups and professional organizations. And top to bottom, lawyers and I think judges are saying, like, this is not who we are as a country. And this is not what our law allows for. And these are unprecedented times. These are, we're a step away from, frankly, almost martial law at times. And I don't say that to be hyperbolic. I think that's real. And I
Hmm.
think we as citizens need to be diligent because there is an attempt to erode our constitutional protections under the guise of immigration enforcement. And it's a really, really, we are in troubling times, and I just don't know where it ends. And it
Yeah.
worries me.
And it is going to absolutely have impacts. We keep hearing rumors and have some generally hard evidence that ICE is planning to come back to Minnesota, and so what that means for free and fair elections this November and
Mhm.
how that all works together. You were following really closely this winter the habeas
Mhm.
granted. Will you tell people a little bit about that and how just dramatically different that is than
Yeah.
normal times, and how what the federal government was doing is just not constitutional, and what how the judicial branch was handling it?
Yeah, habeas corpus is a Latin term that's incorporated into our constitutional law and has been since the founding of the country. And essentially, what it is any person has a right to petition the court for release from custody, if they're under arrest or being detained by law enforcement, and they believe that it's done for an illegal reason. And they file something called a petition for habeas corpus, and a judge can review it and determine, hey, the government is holding these people illegally and they need to be released from custody. And ultimately, that's a decision of the court. And so, habeas corpus petitions are, I wouldn't say they're incredibly unusual. They happen, you see them periodically. At least, in Minnesota, I get emails with all of the federal court decisions that come out in the U.S. federal court. We get these updates like weekly or a couple times a week. They send them out. And most habeas petitions are made to the federal court, not to the state court. Minnesota has a dual court system, like every state, where we have our state courts, and then we have a federal court system. And so most habeas petitions are made under the federal constitution, and then they're made in federal court to a federal court judge. They can be saying the state is holding me illegally or the federal government is holding me illegally, but they're made in the federal court system under the U.S. Constitution. So um, during Metro Surge, we saw an unprecedented uptick in habeas petitions being filed in federal court. And while I don't practice a lot in federal court, I get these updates. And I mean, we were getting, you might see a habeas petition heard in federal court monthly, let's say in Minnesota prior to Metro Surge. And don't quote me on that, but it wasn't, it's not like it never happened, but it certainly wasn't frequent. Um, During Metro Surge, there were hundreds, if not thousands, being filed by really smart lawyers. And there were a lot of lawyers volunteering their time to do it. And what they were doing is they were saying to the federal courts in the District of Minnesota that, hey, these people, whoever they were representing, are being detained illegally, and they were petitioning for their release. Now, prior to Metro Surge, I talked about you might see one a month ish. And most of them were not granted. I mean, the granting of a habeas petition is like a unicorn because the government really has to screw something up. Okay, a prosecutor, law enforcement, there's a lot of steps along the way where there's opportunities to not screw something up. And typically prosecutors, federal prosecutors in particular, they don't want to be in federal court losing a habeas petition because that's a real big deal. That means you really violated the law as a prosecutor or as your agency, law enforcement, did. Well, hundreds of those petitions were granted in the U.S. federal courts in the state of Minnesota during, that 6 month window of time from, let's say, November of last year into April of this year. Hundreds. I mean, and it was like daily we were getting drops of decisions where 6, 7, 8, 10 a day, where federal courts were saying, you illegally detained these people and they have to be released. And that's been well publicized in the media, but the volume was unprecedented. And the federal courts had said, you can't do this anymore. And then if you follow the story, you'll see that, when that started happening, then what ICE was doing is shipping people out of state. So in Minnesota, we had a subset of cases where you could see where a habeas petition would be filed in Minnesota, but by the time it was filed with court in St. Paul or Minneapolis, ICE had taken that person out of the state of Minnesota and shipped them off to Texas. And then because the habeas petition gets filed in the jurisdiction geographically where the individual is being held. So what ICE was doing is saying, well, let's get them the hell out of here, get them out of state so that their lawyers can't seek relief in the state where the lawyers work, i.e. Minnesota.
Such bullshit.
And so then you started seeing there was a detention center in, I think, West Texas. And the judges, federal judges down there were lawyers were saying, well, we're not, nice try, but we're not going to fall for that. And so they would file them in the appropriate district ultimately, and they'd get granted there too. So it wasn't like it was this unique thing where just some, liberal Minnesota judge, for lack of a better way to put it, was granting these petitions. In fact, on the district court level in Minnesota, it was the most conservative judges that were granting these too, appointed by Republican presidents that have served, since that time. There was, I think some were even granted. I think there's one federal judge in Minnesota that might have been appointed by Trump. And I think even that judge was granting some of these petitions. So incredibly unusual, but something that when we started seeing it, the media hadn't reported on it till later in Metro Surge because it's happening in these federal courtrooms, and it's this complex legal thing that nobody sees very frequently and nobody understands what it means. But lawyers who know, hey, habeas petitions being granted is a really big deal. That's a check on the government. That's a judge saying you are violating the constitutional rights of these individuals and you're depriving them of their liberty illegally. And that's something that should frighten everybody, because it's a massive amount. I mean, and it's still, those petitions are still happening today.
Right.
Not quite at the volume maybe that they were in, January, February, that time frame. But I know of lawyers that have volunteered and filed hundreds of them. And most of these that are being filed, they're being filed by lawyers who are volunteering to do it, because they're saying this isn't right. We need to stop doing this. So yeah, it's really pretty incredible and unprecedented.
Yeah, and it's all just going after everyday citizens who are there's so much data out there that these are non-criminals, people just trying to live a good life, and the federal government controls immigration. Like, they have the ability to fix things and to make this work without killing people, without ruining people's lives, and all these things are happening. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for sharing the story. I appreciate it, and we'll keep doing these on different topics and things that affect Shakopee and affect the state of Minnesota, and we will keep going forward. And so if you are listening to the audio of this, if you go on YouTube, you will see the video that we shared and that kind of stuff. So if you want to watch it, go over there. So thanks, Kevin.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks for having me.